Dadhood. Modern Dadhood podcast.
There she blows.
Is that what you say? Is that
Anybody
the saying?
ever actually say that in the setting that I think it comes from, which is maybe pirates? Something with ships?
Wasn't that a Popeye thing?
Popeye say there she blows?
I don't know. Some listener will let us know.
Write in, tell us we're a bunch of idiots.
A bunch of idiots who host the podcast Modern Dadhood.
What a segue, man.
An ongoing conversation about the joys, challenges, and the general insanity of being a dad in this moment.
Yeah.
And my name's Adam Flaherty, and I'm a dad to two daughters who are 11 and 8.
And they are wonderful kids.
They really are. They're the best.
Yeah.
They make
They
me
are, you guys.
crazy, but they are the absolute best.
But my name is Mark Checkett, and I'm also a dad. I have twin boys who are 7.5 years old, just went into second grade. They are unstoppable. You know, they are forces. They are determined, goofy, smart.
They're getting big, and they're the best, too. They, too, are the best.
Today, Adam and I are bringing you, dear listeners, a rewind episode, which is when we reach back into the archives and we pluck out an episode that, I don't know, stuck with us, feels relevant again, maybe still, or just one that we love. And normally, if you're a very avid listener, you know that these intros are usually just one of us doing these intros. This one's a little bit different.
Special.
Because it's a special one because the episode that we are plucking from the archives is one where we interviewed and met, and I would say first became friends with a wonderful man by the name of Victor M. Sweeney, who is he's an undertaker.
An undertaker.
A mortician.
A mortician.
A funeral director.
A funeral director. And now
we
a friend.
And now friend, which makes us funeral directors.
Yeah, that's how that works. Yes.
Yeah.
Unlicensed, for the record.
Of course. No, of course. Naturally. Yeah, that would be crazy. We talked about a lot of wonderful things. He's a smart guy. He's well-read. He's got a lot of wonderful, amazing, and fascinating stories. You know,
For sure.
about things that are just so foreign to us normies. But we talked a lot about a lot of things. He's a dad to 4 kids, and we covered life and death, a little bit about his profession, about maybe what it's like for his kids growing up, literally in and around a funeral home and being so close to the idea of or the reality of death and it being such a close topic. It's a great listen.
Well, this one's special because when we finished that interview with Victor, which you'll hear shortly, from what I remember, after Victor's interview, we stayed on and just talked for a few minutes about how interesting of a person he is. And we were both like, this is somebody that we would like to actually be friends with, like to meet in person. And I do remember saying to Victor after we had stopped the recording, but before we all parted ways, I remember saying, have you ever considered a podcast of your own? Because we knew that there's already an audience for him because the way that, well, Mark, why don't you share how you first discovered Victor and decided to invite him on to be a guest?
Yeah, totally.
Because that's an important piece of this.
It is. It's kind of an integral piece of the story. My lovely wife, Jamie, and I were on the couch one night, just browsing through YouTube as you do now in
YouTube and chill.
Yeah. YouTube and chill at opposite ends of the couch. And we came upon Wired's channel. Wired is like an online publication. They've been around for a long time. They've got a great YouTube channel, and sometimes they have these really wonderful series called Tech Support, and they have different people from all walks of life who come in and answer questions from the internet, I think specifically from Twitter, about whatever their profession is. And that's where I first saw Victor. He actually has 4 episodes on Wired under this same series, and Jamie and I just sat and blasted through all of them because he's just so fascinating. His stories are great, and they're all about stuff like you want to know about, but you don't really you don't really, first of all, know who to ask, or like nobody's just like randomly friends with a mortician who can eloquently explain to you like, what happens if you just throw a body in the ground, you know?
Right.
Or where does all the blood go?
Right, about embalming or cremation. This is just his life. He doesn't think of it as anything, you know, terribly interesting. But for everybody else, the only time that they have interactions with someone who's a mortician, a funeral director, is when they're planning a funeral for somebody that they care about. Right. And that's not the time when you ask a mortician questions about embalming a dead body.
Right.
Right. And so this Wired series gave people access to somebody who's not going to be exploitative about it. Right. He's not sensationalizing anything. He's just answering questions that people are genuinely curious about.
Not only were the questions good, and were there a lot of them because he was on 4 separate times, but I was actually just revisiting some of those videos, and the viewer numbers are astounding. Right. His first video has over 24 million views. The comments section just goes on and on and on. And all of the other ones have multi-millions of views. Like, it's obviously a subject. It's a subject, but then something about Victor that, you know, as you put it, is this sort of lightning in a bottle type scenario. And it clearly resonates with people.
So back to what I was saying, we suggested to Victor, why don't you do a podcast? There's obviously an audience for you and for your content. And at first he kind of joked around like, you know, who's got time for that? But we stayed in touch with him and kind of kept floating the idea. And he said, you know what? I like you guys. I trust you guys. Bring me an idea, a concept, and let's give it a try. And so Mark and I were psyched, and we got to work. We got to work planning a podcast, which we'll announce in just a minute. And we've been, I feel like, teasing for months now. And Mark developed, you know, a number of great artwork concepts, and we chose one. We created this awesome trailer, which we're going to screen for you momentarily. And we ended up pitching it to a bunch of different podcast networks. And if you've been listening to Modern Dadhood for any length of time, you know, this is a passion project for us. It's something that we do on our own. Any money that goes into it comes out of our pockets. You know, we don't really do anything in the way of traditional sponsorships, but we thought we want to take this thing that we are creating and align with a network who has the same vision that we do and sees the same potential and the same magic in Victor and in the concept, and see if we can create something that can be spread more easily to a larger audience, is more accessible, has some resources behind it. And so we've aligned with an amazing small podcast network called Waveland, who has put out some really phenomenal shows.
Not just good shows on Waveland's network, but #1 award-winning shows, like absolutely captivating shows, some very journalistic in nature, some very story-like in nature. And Jason is central to those shows, not just like the production, but the storytelling approach. You know, he really has what I think is a good eye for story, a good eye for what's interesting, and then a good understanding of how to shape something and bring it to an audience. And that's one of the things that's so exciting to both me and Adam. I think we're good at that too. But just knowing that there's another person out there who really excels at that and sees, like you put it, the same potential that we do is just really exciting. It's really like, it just, I think I could speak for both of us when we say like this show, it's going to strike a chord with people when they finally hear it. And I think it's going to do really well.
I think it's going to be tremendously popular.
Huge. Why don't we say the name of the show?
Have at it, man. You make the official announcement while I do the drum roll on my desk.
Fine, but I will say you came up with the idea. for the show.
Getting tired. Getting tired over here.
The show is called Death and with Victor M. Sweeney. There's so much drums.
So this podcast is going to come out on October 1st. We're going to start releasing episodes. It's going to be a weekly show. It's going to be a video and audio podcast. So you can...
Oh, sorry, wrong time for
you
drum
can
roll.
subscribe wherever you like for the audio version, but go to YouTube, Victor M. Sweeney on YouTube for the video version. So this trailer you're about to hear any second now is also exists in video version on Victor's YouTube channel. What do you say we screen it?
Kick it.
Beastie Boys? All right.
Yeah, no, okay. Sorry.
Death. What does that word make you think about? A grandparent? A friend you've lost? Your own mortality? Here's what I think about. What does death have in common with vegetables? What does it have in common with furniture? Or coffee? Or sex? I'm Victor M. Sweeney, and despite accidentally becoming the most famous mortician on the internet just by answering weird questions about dead bodies, I'm a pretty typical guy. Some people like to say I'm in the death business. And no doubt, I spend a lot of time embalming bodies, sifting through human ash, or reconstructing the occasional face. But getting to know the deceased by ushering their loved ones through their grief, essentially exploring life through the lens of death, that's the real reward for this small-town undertaker. And that's why I have a podcast. So if you're drawn to real conversations about death, life, spirituality, mortuary science, and sure, dead bodies, then this isn't just my podcast. It's ours. From Waveland, this is Death and.
Well, that's it. That's it. And I get goosebumps every time. Every stinking time.
Same.
What do you say we cut to the chase? Just get to our, at this point, classic interview with Victor M. Sweeney. Victor M. Sweeney is a dad to 4 kids, a mortician and funeral director, and you might know him from his appearances on the Wired YouTube series Tech Support. Victor, thanks so much for joining Modern Dadhood.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Happy to be here.
4 kids.
Yeah, I was going to say, but usually before we get into like the meat, the nugget of the conversation here, we always like to sort of find a little bit out about our guest's family. Yeah, and 4 kids, that's a lot.
Is it
a
a
handful.
lot?
I was going to say, I grew up, maybe it's like a smaller rural, is kind of rural up there in North Dakota?
All of North Dakota is pretty
It's
rural.
just all rural.
And where I am, I'm in Minnesota now, just over the border, but extremely rural where I am.
It does feel kind of like a rural. I grew up with a family of, I'm one of 4.
There you go.
And I grew up in a pretty rural part of Pennsylvania.
You know what? I'm one of 4 too, and it didn't even cross my mind to say that that's a lot of kids, even though I'm one of 4.
Yeah.
It's
not.
I think it's more just because my peer group is usually like 1 to 2 kids.
Yeah.
It's healthy. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it speaks of like the lack of anything else to do other than have more kids. But I like to think it's pretty wholesome. I feel like the chaos between having 2 kids and having 4 is not substantially different.
Interesting.
So it's just a matter of scale, really.
The chaos kind of narrows maybe the more kids you have. It's just chaos after a certain point.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing but chaos all the way down. So like what's one more kid? If we happen to have another kid and had 5, I think 5 is probably where you cross the threshold of people like looking at you kind of askance.
Perhaps.
But if we cross the threshold and had a 5th, I don't think it would be substantially different. I think it would just be a little extra chaos on top of the big chaos pie.
What are their ages, Victor?
My oldest is 9, and then I have another boy who's 7, a daughter who's 4, and another boy who is 1.5 years.
My daughters are the same age as your 2 oldest.
Nice.
9 and 6.5. So
yeah, it's fun. What we're finding is having the younger ones and then having the older ones. It's awfully nice to have like someone, not that you can rely on 9-year-old boys for much, but you can rely on them sometimes for some things. So that's pretty cool. So
I think sort of the obvious question that listeners might be thinking is, how did somebody who is, in his early 30s get into this line of work? What led you into being a funeral director, or do you prefer mortician? It's interchangeable. The licensure is interchangeable. I think funeral director is maybe a little more palatable than mortician, but mortician does get you the clicks. So you gotta balance that. The truth of the matter is, I started working at a funeral home. I don't know the timeline exactly. I was either 17 or 18. The backstory is this. I'd always wanted to be a Catholic priest. That's what I always wanted to be from the time I was a little boy. And when I discerned out of that in high school, the next question was like, okay, now what? Mm-hmm. Because I don't really like math. I don't like science. Like there are a lot of like things that could get you jobs that I'm just not that interested in.
Yeah.
And so then as I introspected, I realized I'm only really good at talking to people. And so how do you turn that into a job that is outward, service based, but then also can make you enough money to feed your family?
Yeah.
And just stumbled into funeral service. Essentially, I read a book by a funeral director poet named Thomas Lynch, which I'd highly recommend to anybody. Just generally, it's a great book. But read that book and was like, I could try that. And so I went to the local funeral home and got a job just like dusting caskets and wandering around, like doing nothing. And then, just slowly found my way into it. And now here I am, 10 years into licensure and just doing the thing.
Was there a point at which any time in your life sort of leading up to that point where you had either like a fascination or an interest or anything, or even any kind of experience, like being around that kind of thing?
Well, that's the thing. I was around a lot of death growing up. So probably in the 10 years between the time I was like 10 and 20, I had 10 deaths of like aunts, uncles, grandparents. Wow. So I had a lot of that. People that have seen my Wired stuff, I talk about it a little bit, but I found my best friend dead in his bed. Wow. When I was 4, possibly 3. Actually just reconnected with his mother for the first time in 30 years.
Holy cow.
Earlier this year. So that was really special. And then like my parents had a daughter that was born before me that died. So we were at the cemetery and we would do, we'd clean her grave and take care of it. Actually, even now, if my brothers and I go back to Michigan where she's buried, we always go and clean it up because that's what we did as kids. I was around a lot of death growing up. And I think like Catholicism is a lovely mixed bag of like death and life and all that stuff. So it's not, like you read about the stories of like martyrs as a kid and you're like, oh yeah, death. It's like, it's a common thing. It's not unheard of. So yeah, maybe I have a special aptitude for it.
So 9 years ago, you and your wife started having kids. Yeah. And as your kids sort of graduated to ages where they, became conversational enough, to really understand what you do for work, did it raise questions for them, or was it just normal for them because they knew nothing? So what kind of conversations did it inspire with your kids?
Well, so when you do what I do, you know how you guys, I don't know what you do for a living, but you go home and you talk about work around the kitchen table, right? And I do that too. But it's always, oh yes, so-and-so died, or I embalmed a body last night before you woke up, or where's dad? He's at a funeral right now, or at a visitation right now. He won't be back until bedtime. So it's very common, we talk about funerals all the time. We talk about dead bodies all the time. There are always questions. Like I bring my kids into work with me pretty often. If I have stuff I have to do at the office, I'll just drag the kids along and we'll play with cars or use granite samples for headstones as building blocks, or sometimes we'll do a Lego set, something like that. And I'll be working. But often enough, I'll set the kids up in my office and then I'll go into our funeral chapel and like do somebody's makeup or something. And so the kids pop their heads in and they ask, what's up with that guy? Well, children, he's dead. He's not getting up. He's not going to hurt you. He had a family just like us. And now this is just his body. And it's my job to just make his body look nice so his family can see him again. And sometimes, like my middle son would come and we'd pull up a chair and he'd just stand there and watch me work. Whereas my daughter will just stay in the office and, will yell at me through the door. So it's, I think each kid kind of gets what they need out of it. If they have questions, I just answer them, whatever the truth is.
I do appreciate, in having watched all of the Wired videos, and I think this is what makes you such an appealing person for that kind of format, is that you have a sense of humor, and it's an industry, the business that requires, you're dealing with huge emotions, and it requires a real level of dignity. But I think in any line of work, if you can bring to it a sense of humor, an appropriate level of humor, right, it's going to make everybody's experience better and more comfortable. And I just want to say, it's not a question. No. I just want to say that I like that a lot.
And thank you. And it's kind of threading the needle in some ways, right? Because there are other morticians that are more media savvy than I am, surely. But there is that balance of trying to strike between being yourself and being genuine. And that includes humor, but also carrying yourself with some dignity, right? You have to do both. Yeah. And actually, when we talk about kids, like that's really one of the tricks too. Because if you are all just doom and gloom and guess what, son, you're going to die someday. Nobody's taking anything good away from that. So yeah, it's the balance. Everything is the balance. The via media, right? Virtue is found in the middle. And so if you can do that, if you can be both warm, but also removed from your job enough to actually do it, if you can be humorous, but dignified, if you can be honest, but light, right? Those are those balances that you have to strike.
And there's also the balance between the person who is running the funeral and the person who has to do the less glamorous part of actually embalming a body, right? It's you're providing emotional support for families and doing what I can have to imagine. It can be some pretty grueling, like physical work that's where you have to strip the emotion out of it and treat it like it was a person, and there's dignity, but also you have this job to do to take this now object, right, and reconnect it to the emotion. It's just so complex and interesting.
And so I have a story for you actually just about this. We had a gentleman pass away, and he fell to his death and ended up with a pretty major head injury. So he'd been in the hospital some time, and the families, when they came in to sit down, they met with the other funeral director that works here. I was in the back working on this gentleman, my friend, really. We knew each other. And I'd gotten a good part of work done, and then kind of came out and talked with his family. And they're like, well, we're going to have the casket closed. I was like, that sounds fine, but just keep the door open, because I think we can do this. I'm pretty sure we can make Dad look like himself, but just keep the door open. Like, you can say it's closed. Great. Yeah. What if we just had a time for you and your family to come see him? And then we can close the casket, and then everybody else can come. They said that was fine. So I worked on Dad for quite some time, got a lot of the missing parts of the skull back together, and did a lot of suturing and sewing to get all the lacerations closed back up. When they'd last seen him in the hospital, obviously he looked really, really, really rough.
Yeah.
And so then we fast forward to the evening of the visitation. I'm getting flowers and stuff set up. I'm just kind of doing my work. And the family's like, hey, Victor, just come on and open it up. I think we're ready to see him. Fine. So I had them turn around. I open up the casket, get everything ready. And I kind of step back and I hear, he actually doesn't look too bad. I'm kind of surprised. He looks not perfect, but more like himself. So they kind of spend some time with Dad. And then one of them goes, well, I don't think the grandkids should see him. And then I kind of step back in. I'm like, you guys, I can't tell you what to do, but can I just tell you my opinion? I said, the thing is, your kids, their imaginations for the last week have been 100 times worse than what dad looks like right now.
Yeah, wow.
Like their imagination is your dad falling and everything just going utterly wrong.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what to do, but I would at least consider it. And so after some more discussion, they decide, I think the grandkids should see him. And in fact, I think the whole town who's going to be coming to this funeral should see dad, at least for a little bit. So we ended up we went from close the casket
fully closed
to let's have it open for a while, just so people can say goodbye.
Yeah.
And that's a win. Was it perfect?
Yeah.
No. But I really appreciate it when a family, and especially the children, can come away with something that was better than their imagination.
Yeah.
And again, we talk about the balance, right? We have to understand how to talk about that. But we also don't want to be so callous or so unimaginative that our children don't understand us.
Right.
Like when we say something like, oh, it's just a shell. Like, well, hold on. That looks an awful lot like my grandpa.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of problematic to say grandpa is now just a shell.
Right. Right.
The trick, I think, is just always telling the truth and getting kids involved. One thing that's nice about being a young parent is I think we can smell each other. Do you ever have that experience? Like you can just tell someone's a parent.
Yeah.
I prefer to think of it more as like a twinkle in the eye than an odor, but sure. Yes. We know what you're going for.
That's funny.
So, I mean, but you see it in other parents. So a lot of times when I have, like, let's say we have something like an open casket or even here, let's take something less concrete. Let's say grandma has been cremated and we have her urn up front. Kids do not understand that well. And so I just always offer that. Like if I see a little kid, I make a beeline and it's either I ask the kid or I ask the parent, ask me a question. Yeah. Because I just soon answer a question than have someone walk away from my building not knowing what the heck they just witnessed.
Right.
I think that philosophy is it's so much like how Mark and I always talk about parenting. Why are we going to sugarcoat something? When we can be authentic with them and we can find a way to say to explain something that is truthful, but also doesn't have to be blunt. It doesn't have to be graphic. Being open and honest with your kids and allowing them the space to ask those questions is a powerful thing.
I was just going to say that bit, Adam, right? Like being open and honest, but then also just allow that room. Do you have any questions? And also probably this is my experience, being 100% okay with my answer to a question being, I have no idea. Let's
That's it.
Let's go and try to find that answer together,
Before you joined, Victor, Mark and I were talking about, Mark asked me, have my kids asked my wife, Sarah, and I about death? How do you answer that question when you're asked?
So I like answering it in kind of the Platonic fashion. Thomas Aquinas, he has rules for disputation, right? If you ever met with an argument, there are 3 things you must do. Never deny, seldom affirm, and always distinguish. And so the way I like to explain it is this, and I explain it this way to Catholics. I explain it this way to like atheist families. I explain it this way to like just anyone because I think we could almost all agree with it. And it's this. So there are things in this life that we cannot touch. We know they exist, but we cannot touch them. So things like love, things like justice, things like truth, right? You ask a little kid about fairness, they recognize fairness. Nobody has to teach a kid what's fair, right? So these things exist. We don't know exactly how, but they exist out there. They're outside of us. When we live, there are things that we can touch, right? Like a chair, right? You can touch it with your hand. It's a thing. You can hold it. It's tangible. But there's a part inside of us that can touch those intangible things. And so I would say that part inside of us that recognizes these things we cannot touch is the thing inside of us that we cannot touch. And I would call that the soul. And so at the end of our lives, the physical part of us, we see it die. But the part of him that is intangible, that part we cannot touch, it has to go somewhere. And being that things like love and truth and justice are outside of us, outside of our earthly experience, then I think it makes sense too that our soul then follows those things.
puts it on an equal playing field for everybody, and allows you to take what you want from that. So if I believe that there are times when I can feel the presence of my mother, that if I'm with my family and my girls, that her presence, her spirit is there with us. And
Yes.
I don't know if her energy is there or not, but I do like that it inspires that feeling in me, and that I can share that with my daughters. I think that's a comforting thing. And so I think your explanation does a really nice job of making the idea accessible to anybody.
Yeah.
It's fun to have these discussions with children, especially because most kids are going to be more open to the idea that a dragon is real than you or me. And a child is going to be more open to the idea that, like, oh, yes, I know there's a thing like love, and my grandma loved me. And if I can experience love without touching it, I can experience my dead grandma without her being here.
Mm-hmm.
I think children need to be involved. I had a funeral last year, one of my favorites actually, and it was a great grandma. I think we had 16, fewer than 20. I think we had 16 great grandchildren.
Wow. Yeah.
And kind of the same thing, like a precocious, weird little bunch, and they had a ton of questions. And so then right before the funeral, we're going to close the casket, and I kind of stopped and I turned around and I was like, would you kids want to help me? And they're like, yeah. So I stepped out of the way, and all these little hands are reaching in, rolling up the interior of the casket around grandma. And then I pulled the lock, and all the great grandkids, helped me close it. And I was like, all right, can we say goodbye to grandma? And they're like, goodbye, grandma. And they're like, patting the thing. It was the cutest, loveliest thing.
Yeah.
And then that's just another one of those that, I think the work of burying our dead, as much of it as I do, it's nice when you give other people like a safe and comfortable opportunity to do that work too.
Absolutely.
And then when you hand it off to children to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a generational gift that you're giving.
And kids just want to be involved, Don't they just kind of want to do everything that you're doing and experience the things that you're experiencing, and always kind of tag along and allowing that at every turn? It is such a gift.
I never formulated a true question about this, but it's another one of those things where there's this balance of empathy, compassion, relationships, and then this other piece where this is a business, and you're thinking about profitability. I mean, a business is a business, and that doesn't mean it's bad, but you need to have enough. You're in an industry there will always be supply, right? But which is good for job security, but it's still
absolutely.
A business.
Supply and it's kind of monopolistic too, right? I'm the only funeral home within 30 miles. So I'm it, right? I could charge whatever I want,
right?
And people would probably just suck it up and pay it.
Yeah.
Right. So there is a certain amount, especially in an area where I am, where you don't have competition really, there is a certain amount of trust that you have to build with families, so they don't look at you when they see your bottom line and go, whoa,
yeah.
You don't want that. It's like, I don't put any pressure on families to buy any particular casket because they're buying me. I'm not a casket salesman, right? I'm a funeral director.
And that's like you were just kind of saying, it's some of what you do is very hard to teach other people to do, which means, to a certain degree, folks like you, it just has to be this innate thing that happens to be right, which makes it even more of a sort of potentially sought after and potentially valuable, but also just a needed thing in that moment. Like to your point, like a casket, you could go wherever and buy a casket, and the guy next door is going to sell you the same stuff. You can order one from
Costco and get it delivered to your house. Yeah.
I think you can actually buy the Kiss themed casket from Costco. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
why isn't everyone doing that?
I don't know. But it's really interesting, a really interesting thing. And it's such a vital role at that time.
Yeah. And doesn't it seem kind of sleazy if a substantial portion of my income is made on a box that I sell, and I make more on the nicer box? Like, I don't think that engenders trust.
Yeah.
My last question for you is, obviously a lot of times it seems that funeral homes are family businesses, and I wonder if your kids have expressed interest in your line of work, and if you think potentially someday you could make it your family business.
Maybe. I don't know. When I was coming up through the ranks, every funeral director I met said, "Hi, how you doing? I'm so glad you're looking into this. Don't do it. Hours are bad. Pay is subpar. You're going to see a lot of gross stuff. It's very inconvenient. Your wife isn't going to like it. You should probably just not go any further." And I think they're right. I think every point is completely accurate. But even then, I think it's important to like understand that the job, I think, at least if you're thinking about it right, is calling, right? It's something that you have the nuts and bolts into you, and it's just a matter of assembling them in the proper way to get where I am now.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think at some point, I imagine you recognize that within you was something, an ability, or recognized your ability to balance some of these things that we talk about. I wonder if, as your kids are growing up, I wonder if you recognize that in one of your kids with that.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I think, the way I think about my work, maybe it's too philosophical. I don't know. I butt heads sometimes with other folks about it. But if maybe I talk about it enough and think about it enough, maybe the kids will either see it or they won't. Right. And I'm okay with that. Because it really is, it's a lifestyle. You have to learn to be okay with being called away in the middle of a meal or missing, I missed Easter dinner last year.
Oh boy.
Or just, whatever it is, just your life kind of revolves around other people's troubles, which is hard and good and bad. And, it's the whole mixed bag of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are days where I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Certainly the hard days, like when you bury a child, I don't want to work that day. But you can't not do it. I probably would actively dissuade my kids and just see if they're like dumb and stubborn enough, just like me, to do it.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Pay it forward,
It's your calling.
Yeah. Wow.
Dads listening and moms, we will put links to Victor's Wired series on YouTube in the show notes. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and we wish the best to your whole family, and hope to stay in touch with you.
I would like that. I hope to talk to you again. Thank you for having me on, you guys.
Thanks, Victor. So here's the thing. I've been thinking about this conversation a lot. I also love film. I love movies. Okay. So here's what I did. I gathered a list of films, and maybe more accurately, scenes within films that have death scenes. Now, these are films that I would categorize as kids or younger themed, films that are appropriate for younger audience members.
Okay.
And I started thinking about them in the context of this episode, and I wondered how helpful, or perhaps on the other end of the spectrum, how hurtful some of these scenes are as it relates to talking about and dealing with and processing the topic of death with our kids. So I came up with a scale. Would you like to hear the scale?
Sure.
Here's what it is. From 1 to 5, 1 being an enlightening experience and 5 being totally traumatizing. And I've got all points in between here. And what I thought was, I'll say the movie, I'll say the scene. You and I can talk a little bit about where that particular scene falls in the scale.
I love the game, but what if I don't know the scene?
We'll talk about it. All right. I'm going to start. Here's the thing. Listeners are already thinking about this scene, so we're going to start with it.
Thomas J., my girl.
Oh, shit.
Was that it? That was the first one?
That's actually my second one.
Okay.
We're going to get there. The first one, Mufasa's death in The Lion King.
Long live the king.
Where do you rate that on the scale?
So, I mean, there's a lot of factors here because it depends on the age, but I'm assuming that the kid who's watching it is, between 4 and 7, somewhere in there. If they're watching a Disney cartoon, I mean, he tumbles off that cliff and is essentially trampled to death. Like that for a kid that age, that's probably pretty traumatizing. I would say I would probably go 4. Only because it's still a cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you fall?
I'm landing 4 or 5, because let's not forget one very key detail.
He was murdered.
That was a murder.
Yeah.
And it was
him.
a family member.
Right.
It was his brother that murdered him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then he tried to pin it, by the way, on Simba, on his nephew. He tried to pin it on the son.
Right. So there's some psychological shit happening here.
Layers. Yeah. That is not a conversation that's easy to have.
That could bump it up from a 4 to a 5.
Okay. All right. So we're talking maybe totally traumatizing on that one. Since you came out with it right at the top, let's talk about Thomas J's death in My Girl. So Thomas J being Macaulay Culkin.
I'm going to assume that the audience is a little bit older for this one.
I'll give you that.
Because the subject matter of the film is slightly more mature. So I'm going to guess that this is kids who are 6 to 12.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit wider of a range.
Mm-hmm.
But that is... So there's a couple things with this one because the actual way that he dies is not traumatizing at all.
It's a little weird. Maybe a little odd.
It's a little weird, but also like it's almost a little bit funny because he's getting stung by these bees and he's not even running away. He's just kind of
slapping.
No, don't do that. No, stop. So it's not funny. It's not funny, but it's not a traumatizing death. What could potentially be traumatizing is seeing him in the open cat. Oh, Thomas J. He can't see without his glasses.
Hold on. Hold on.
His face hurts. And where is his glasses? He can't see without his glasses.
That's it. That's it. It's just to me, it's still so heart-wrenching.
It is heart-wrenching.
The best friend leaning over the casket. And she's saying, you idiots. This is not what Thomas J looks like. That's what she's saying. This is not the Thomas J that I know. You screwed it up. So she's grappling with the reality of the fact that he's not coming back. And she's saying somebody screwed up. If Thomas J wears glasses, why isn't he wearing glasses and giving Veda Saltenfuss the final? You didn't think I remembered her name, did you?
Oh, I remembered it too.
Why isn't that Mortician, which, by the way, is her father?
Is her dad, who knew Thomas J very well,
known better? Why aren't we giving her, the proper? It's just heart-wrenching on so many levels. I would say this though, if I'm going to rate it, I would actually put it towards a 1 because it feels like the actual, while it's traumatizing, it kind of feels true to reality in so many ways.
Sure. But for a kid who's never experienced a funeral, there's still that kind of creepiness factor of seeing somebody laying in a casket. Yeah. I would still go 2. I would probably put it at a 2, if not a 3. But because you're going to go to the very low end, I'll skew down to a 2.
All right. Your kid's going to bat an eye, but it is a good introduction to the concept of death.
Sure.
Okay. Now, trigger warning to some listeners. Are Tex's death in the never-ending story?
I don't remember it.
What?
Dad! Stupid horse! You gotta move or you'll die! Move, please! I won't give up! Don't quit! Attack!
I think the never-ending story in itself, just the giant dog, was traumatizing to me. So traumatizing enough that I've never desired to return to it.
First of all, it's the luck dragon. The Swamp of Sadness. Okay, so Artax dies in the Swamp of Sadness. Artax is Atreyu's horse, okay? And they're going through this barren landscape, the Swamp of Sadness. And anyone who is overcome with the feeling of depression while in the swamp can't make it out. And for some reason in the film, now it's a fantasy. So at the end of the movie, we see Atreyu riding Artax again through the fields. All is well. But in the midst of that movie, a thing that is so complex to understand, right? The idea of, for children, for anybody really, the idea of like a feeling of sadness so deep and so heavy that you can't do anything about it. It consumes you. That's what kills this horse in the middle of the movie. And Atreyu is yanking as hard as he can, pleading with the horse. Come on, please. But then he gets mad at the horse. Definitely traumatizing. Definitely traumatizing. I think I'm going to put it towards a 4 or a 5 because of just how gut wrenching it is.
Well, I'm not sold on going back to rewatch it anytime soon.
You should rewatch it. All right,
what's the next one?
Let's do another one real quick here. Let's just go. Give me 1 to 5. Littlefoot's mom's death in The Land Before Time.
Mother?
Now, I did watch The Land Before Time quite a lot when I was a kid, but I have to say, I don't recall the specific scene. Can you refresh me on the scene when Littlefoot's mom dies?
Well, there's a lot going on. There's a little bit of volcanic action happening. I'm pretty sure Sharptooth is in the scene as well. So there's a little bit of like the predator prey thing going on. And essentially, Littlefoot's mom, really, she sacrifices herself. And here's the real gut wrenching piece. He kind of is looking around for her, finds her, goads her to sort of get up,
I do.
That's a hard scene.
Have that image in my head. Sure.
That's a hard scene. I'm going to go with Quite Concerned, which is number 4. I'm going to go, it's going to leave a lasting impression, but there's going to have to be a discussion afterwards. And the discussion is about sacrifice.
Because I really hope that I know this last one, because
I could go with a couple. Let me just, why don't we do a rapid fire? Bambi's mom.
That death can be traumatic, especially because you don't see it. You only hear it, right? I'm going to say that's a 4.
Okay.
You?
Same. How about Up? How about the opening scene of Up?
Yeah, that's a tough one because it will conjure up images of your own grandparents, right? And the love that they have and the loss, not only when you lose a grandparent, but when one grandparent loses their partner. I think that probably is like a 1.
Oh, there's just so many images that just get like, just hook into your brain,
I like the game. Look, I'm not going to lie. It ran long. This episode is long, but I like that game.
Well, maybe the topic of death, dealing with it, living with it, a part of our lives, maybe it warrants a long episode.
I think that's fair, and I will go with you on that. Dads and moms listening, thank you so much for spending some time with us on Modern Dadhood. We appreciate you. We hope that if you haven't listened to all of our episodes, you'll go back and listen to them on Apple Podcasts or Amazon Music or Spotify or at moderndadhood.com, where you can find, all of them. You can
They're not all as long, and they're not all about death.
Most of them are around 30 minutes. This one is longer.
A little bit longer.
Please go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen. Leave us a rating, a 5-star rating. If you don't care one way or another, 5 stars would make a big difference to us. Leave us a short review. Tell a friend about Modern Dadhood. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of them.
I don't know if you said this yet, but we have an email address, which is hey@moderndadhood.com. You can actually write directly, just write a letter to me and Adam, and you can say anything you want. You can just tell us how your day was, or you can pitch us a topic. But I implore you to first go over to the shop, check out the t-shirts and the Modern Dad hoodies. They're very comfortable. All of them are very comfortable, and every one of them ships with a sticker. Buy one for yourself, buy one for a loved one, get a gift.
I want to take a quick second to thank Casper Baby Pants and Spencer Albee for the music heard in our podcast. I want to thank Pete Morse at Red Vault Audio for taking these files that we record and making them sound great. Pete's awesome at what he does. Audio production, post-production, composing, all of it. Learn about his services at redvaultaudio.com. Thanks to Victor M. Sweeney, who was just an awesome guest. I learned a lot. I feel like we made a new friend. It was a delight talking to him. Check out the Victor M. Sweeney links in our show notes. And Mark, why don't you go ahead with your final bullet here?
All right, there's just one thing left to say.
And it is...
Thank you for listening.